Number 15. The Oakville Blobs. In August 1994, Oakville, Washington, a town built on the timber trade, experienced a bizarre phenomenon when gelatinous blobs, each roughly the size of a grain of rice, reportedly poured from the sky and were found scattered across the ground. A local resident reported that these mysterious translucent blobs had rained down in the night. Soon after, she and her mother developed flu-like symptoms, which they attributed to contact with the blobs. And this was just the beginning. The next few weeks saw 5 more incidents afflicting the town, with multiple residences claiming illness after exposure to the goo. Intrigued and concerned, a microbiologist from the Washington State Department of Health examined the blobs, discovering they contained 2 species of bacteria. However, there was no clear indication that these bacteria might cause illness. Speculation about the origin of the blobs ran wild. Some proposed that they were the result of classified military experiments, though there was no evidence to back this. Another theory suggested that jellyfish could have been shredded and swept into the stratosphere by U.S. Air Force exercises over the nearby Pacific Ocean. This theory too lacked credible evidence. An alternative explanation considered the possibility that the blobs had not, in fact, fallen from the sky, but had appeared on the ground through natural processes. Similar substances, known as star jelly, have been recorded in scientific literature and poetry for centuries. These gelatinous substances have been attributed to various sources, including algae, amphibians, slime molds, and even sodium polyacrylate crystals, which are used in agriculture. In 2012, a similar occurrence was reported in Bournemouth, England, where sodium polyacrylate crystals absorbed water from a storm and formed gelatinous blobs. This incident suggests that the Oakville blobs might have had a similar origin, pointing towards a natural rather than an extraterrestrial or military explanation. Whether a rare meteorological event or an everyday chemical reaction, the blobs have left a lasting impression on Oakville's history. Number 14. The Vanishing of Lars Mittank. On July 8, 2014, the mysterious disappearance of 28-year-old German Lars Mittank near Varna Airport in Bulgaria left the world baffled. Chilling security footage of his last moments has since captivated millions online, earning him the unsettling title of the most famous missing person on YouTube. 28-year-old Lars from Berlin, Germany, had embarked on a holiday with friends to Bulgaria, but moments before he was due to board his flight back home, Lars fled the bustling Varna airport, seemingly in a state of panic. He was last seen sprinting into the surrounding forest, and he's never been found. The enigma of Lars Mittank's disappearance began innocently enough. Lars joined his school friends for a vacation at the Black Sea coast's Golden Sands Resort. However, the trip took a turn when Lars got into a bar fight over a soccer rivalry, leaving him with a jaw injury and a ruptured eardrum. This injury was the catalyst for a series of inexplicable events. After the fight, Lars sought medical attention and was prescribed the antibiotic Cefprozil to prevent infection. Due to his ruptured eardrum, the doctor he saw advised that it was unsafe for him to fly. His friends offered to stay with him, but Lars insisted they return home while he recuperated and arranged a later flight. He checked into a hotel near the airport, but his behavior soon grew erratic. Surveillance footage captured him acting strangely, hiding in the elevator and leaving the hotel in the middle of the night, only to return hours later. He called his mother, whispering that people were out to get him and asking her to block his credit cards. On the day of his disappearance, Lars visited the airport doctor to get clearance for his flight. The doctor noted that Lars seemed anxious and kept asking about his medication. The airport was undergoing renovations, and when a construction worker entered the office, Lars became visibly agitated. He muttered, "I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here," and then bolted from the office, leaving his belongings behind. He ran through the airport, scaled a fence, and disappeared into the dense forest nearby. Despite exhaustive searches and numerous theories, Lars Mittang's fate remains a puzzle. Some believe he was suffering from a psychotic episode, possibly triggered by the medication he was prescribed. Cefprozil's side effects include dizziness and hyperactivity, and in rare cases, antibiotics can cause acute psychosis. Others suggest more sinister explanations. Some theories propose that Lars may have been involved in a criminal enterprise or a drug deal gone wrong, though there is little evidence to support this. Another theory posits that Lars was being pursued by the men from the bar fight, driving him to flee. Despite innumerable theories, no one has found any trace of him since that fateful day. Occasional reports of sightings around the world have sparked brief moments of hope for Lars's friends and family, but they have all led to dead ends. In one instance, a man found in Brazil bore a striking resemblance to Lars, but he was later identified as another missing person, Anton Pilipa from Toronto, who had been unaccounted for 5 years. The case of Lars Mittang endures as one of the most perplexing modern mysteries. The CCTV footage of his last moments continues to haunt viewers, and the questions surrounding his disappearance remain unanswered. Was he a victim of foul play, a tragic accident, or a severe psychological break? As his family and the online community persist in their search, the world remains captivated by the mystery of the man who vanished without a trace. Number 13. The disappearance of Ettore Majorana. Ettore Majorana was once a name known only to those invested in theoretical physics, but he has since become a well-known figure to those invested in the mysterious and unexplained. Born in 1906 in Catania, Sicily, Majorana seemed destined for greatness in the realm of science. By his early 30s, he had already carved out a reputation as one of the brightest minds in physics, working on neutrino masses and unraveling the complexities of atomic spectroscopy. Yet it wasn't his scientific achievements that many remember, but his inexplicable disappearance in 1938. On March 25th of that year, Majorana purchased a ticket for a ship voyage from Palermo to Naples. It was a routine trip, or so it seemed. He was expected to return to his work at the University of Naples, where he had recently secured a position as a professor of theoretical physics. However, Majorana never completed the journey. Instead, he vanished into thin air. Majorana was not just another physicist. He was a genius in a league of his own. Enrico Fermi, one of the most influential physicists of the 20th century, once remarked, "There are several categories of scientists in the world, but then there are the geniuses, like Galileo and Newton. Majorana was one of these." Majorana's contributions to the field were profound and included the Majorana equation and the prediction of particles, later confirmed to exist, known as Majorana fermions. Despite his brilliance, Majorana was known for his modesty, often considering his groundbreaking work to be merely banal. As Majorana prepared for his ill-fated final journey, he left behind a letter addressed to Antonio Corelli, the director of the Naples Physics Institute. The note was somber and cryptic, suggesting a premeditated departure. "Dear Corelli, I made the decision that has become unavoidable. There isn't a bit of selfishness in it, but I realize what trouble my sudden disappearance will cause you and the students. For this as well, I beg your forgiveness, but especially for betraying the trust, the sincere friendship, and the sympathy you gave me over the past months." Soon after, Majorana sent a telegram retracting his travel plans, yet proceeded to board the ship from Palermo anyway. He was never seen again. The note hinted at a profound internal struggle, with Majorana writing vaguely, "I ask you to remember me to all those I learned to know and appreciate in your institute. I will keep a fond memory of them all, at least until 11 p.m. tonight, possibly later too." This note of finality deepened the mystery. Over the years, numerous theories have emerged to explain Majorana's disappearance. Some speculate that he took his own life, unable to cope with the immense pressure and expectations of his work. Others believe he may have chosen to disappear voluntarily, seeking solitude in a monastery or adopting a new identity in South America. Indeed, there were reports and supposed sightings of Majorana in Argentina and Venezuela in the years following World War II, but none were definitively confirmed. The intrigue surrounding Majorana's fate was further fueled by his work with prominent physicists like Werner Heisenberg and Niels Bohr, and his pivotal role in early nuclear research. Could his disappearance have been related to the nascent atomic bomb projects? Some even theorized kidnapping or murder to prevent his participation in atomic weapon development. The mystery was compounded by the fact that Majorana withdrew all his money from the bank shortly before his disappearance, suggesting a planned and deliberate act. In March 2011, the Rome Attorney's Office reopened the case, prompted by new witness statements and the discovery of a photograph taken in Argentina in 1955. Analysis of the photograph suggested a strong resemblance to Majorana, leading investigators to conclude that he might have lived in South America subsequent to his disappearance from Italy. By February 2015, the office declared the case officially closed, citing evidence that Majorana had been alive between 1955 and 1959, living in Valencia, Venezuela. They found no criminal evidence related to his disappearance, indicating it was likely a personal choice. Despite the official closure, the mystery of Ettore Majorana remains. His disappearance is not just a tale of a missing person, but a narrative of a brilliant mind grappling with the weight of genius, and perhaps an attempt to find peace in anonymity. Number 12. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. In January of 1959, 10 hikers embarked on a challenging winter trek through Russia's Ural Mountains. Among them was Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student at the Ural Polytechnic Institute, and his peers, all seasoned hikers. 5 days into the journey, Yuri Yudin, one of the hikers, turned back due to a flare-up of sciatica, a decision that would ultimately save his life. The remaining 9 hikers pressed on, planning to send a message to their sports club upon completion of their trek. But when February 20th rolled around with no word from the group, a sense of dread began to creep over their friends and family. A search party was dispatched to find them. For weeks, they searched to no avail. But eventually, the search team stumbled upon a disturbing scene. The first bodies were discovered scattered across the snow, some in various states of undress, others bearing mysterious injuries. One hiker was found with burns on his body and a piece of his own knuckle in his mouth, suggesting a moment of extreme desperation. As the search continued, more bodies were found further away, appearing to have been attempting to return to the tent. Months later, after the snow began to melt, the remaining 4 hikers were found in a ravine. Their injuries were even more inexplicable. One had a fractured skull, while 2 others suffered from crushed chests. Most chilling of all, a tongue and 2 pairs of eyes were missing. The initial investigation concluded that the hikers had died from a compelling natural force. But the bizarre nature of their injuries and the strange circumstances surrounding their deaths left room for wild speculation. Some believed the hikers fell victim to secret Soviet military tests. Others suggested a Yeti attack, or even an encounter with extraterrestrial beings. The discovery of trace amounts of radiation on some of the hikers' clothing further fueled suspicions of a governmental cover-up. Despite these theories, the most plausible explanation came decades later. In 2019, the Russian government reopened the case. Andrei Kuryakov, the lead prosecutor, proposed a slab avalanche theory. Unlike traditional avalanches, a slab avalanche involves a large, flat piece of snow shearing off and sliding down a slope. In 2021, researchers published a study supporting the slab avalanche theory. Using a mathematical model, they demonstrated that the weather conditions and terrain at Dyatlov Pass could indeed produce such an event. The theory suggests that the hikers, fearing a larger avalanche, slashed their tent from the inside and fled into the night, inadequately dressed for the freezing temperatures. Seeking refuge, they attempted to build a fire and dig a snow den. Those who managed to create the den likely suffered severe injuries when it collapsed. The missing eyes and tongue could theoretically be attributed to scavenging animals. While the slab avalanche theory offers a scientific explanation, it doesn't answer all the questions, and other experts remain cautious. Ethan Green, director of the Colorado Avalanche Information Center, acknowledged the theory's possibility, but questioned its likelihood. Others noted that slab avalanches typically occur on steeper slopes than Dyatlov Pass. Despite these doubts, the slab avalanche theory remains the most convincing explanation for the Dyatlov Pass incident. Yet, doubt remains. Number 11. The disappearance of the Sodder children. 'Twas the night before Christmas in 1945, when George and Jenny Sauter and 9 of their 10 children went to bed, eager for Christmas morning to arrive. By 1 in the morning, their house was engulfed in flames. George, Jenny, and 4 of the children escaped, but the other half vanished in the smoke. George desperately attempted to find the 5 children still trapped inside, but the smoke was so heavy he couldn't see anything. He raced outside, thinking he could get in through a window upstairs with the ladder that was kept leaning against the house. But it was gone. Desperate, he planned to drive his coal trucks near the home to get to the windows that way. But neither truck would start, despite functioning perfectly the day prior. 5 children were trapped inside the inferno, and there was no way to save them. Meanwhile, Marion tried to phone the fire department at a neighbor's home, but there was no answer. Another neighbor also attempted to call, but again, no response. The neighbor took the initiative to track down Fire Chief F.J. Morris themselves, who began implementing the phone tree alarm system. Still, the firemen were too late. They did not show up until 8 a.m., by which time the Sauter home was totally destroyed, and the 5 children that were not accounted for were gone. George and Jenny assumed the children had perished in the fire, but strangely, no remains were found. Chief Morris theorized that the fire had been so hot that the bodies had been entirely cremated. Faulty wiring was cited by the state police inspector as the cause of the fire. Death certificates were issued by the coroner, citing fire or suffocation as the cause of death. Yet, the Sauters began to question things. George Sauter had lately had heated arguments within the Italian community in Fayetteville, particularly about Italian dictator Mussolini, to whom George was vehemently opposed. In recent months, strange occurrences had plagued the Sauter household. A passerby, who was a complete stranger, warned that their fuse boxes would cause a fire, despite recent inspections confirming their safety. An irate life insurance salesman threatened their home would burn and their children would perish because of George's anti-Mussolini remarks. A man was seen watching the children from a parked car. At 12:30 a.m. on Christmas morning, a strange phone call woke Jenny. An unfamiliar voice requested an unknown person, accompanied by laughter and the sound of clinking glasses. Jenny hung up, noticing the lights were still on downstairs. The curtains were open, and the front door remained unlocked. She turned off the lights, locked up, and went back to bed. She then heard a bang on the home's roof, and a noise like something was rolling. This was shortly followed by smoke seeping inside. Jenny questioned how there could be nothing left of her 5 children. Household appliances survived the fire. How had they withstood the blaze, and nothing of her children? She conducted experiments with animal bones, burning them over and over, but always left with charred remains. A crematorium employee confirmed that when bodies are burned at 2,000 degrees for as long as 2 hours, bones still remain. The house fire lasted only 45 minutes before it was doused. A phone repairman later discovered the phone lines had not been burned, but rather cut. The lights in the home remained on during the blaze, despite the supposed electrical fire. A man was seen in the area with a block and tackle that could be utilized in the removal of car engines. Perhaps he disabled George's trucks. Near the home's ashes, the youngest child, Sylvia, who had escaped the blaze, discovered a strange rubber object, possibly a pineapple bomb. Could that have been what Jenny heard land and roll across the roof? In the following weeks and months, several sightings of the children were reported. A woman claimed she'd seen them in a car during the time the fire was burning. Another claimed to have served them breakfast the next morning. A hotel witness claimed to have seen them with Italian-looking adults a week later. The FBI was contacted, but couldn't intervene without local authorities' approval, which was denied. Private investigator C.C. Tinsley found that the insurance salesman who had made the threats towards George was on the coroner's jury. Fire Chief Morris reportedly found a heart in the ashes, later identified as beef liver. Rumors spread that he planted it to pacify the family. The Sodders bought a billboard and offered a reward for information. In 1968, they received a photo of a man resembling Lewis, one of the missing children, with a cryptic note. They hired a detective, who vanished. George died in 1968, still seeking answers. Jenny wore black until her death in 1989, maintaining hope. Sylvia, who was only 3 when this all began, continued to engage with crime sleuths online until her death in 2021, still seeking closure for the mystery that began on that fateful Christmas morning. Unfortunately, this is one mystery that may never be solved. Number 10. The mysterious death of Zygmunt Adamski. In the quiet village of Tingley, near Wakefield, Yorkshire, the summer of 1980 was punctuated by a chilling event that continues to baffle investigators and spark theories of the paranormal to this day. Zygmunt Adamski, a 56-year-old miner, vanished without a trace one June afternoon, having left his home to run a simple errand. His sudden disappearance sent the tight-knit community into shock and baffled his colleagues at Lofthouse Colliery. 5 days later, the mystery deepened when a grim discovery was made. Zygmunt's lifeless body was found atop a pile of coal in a Todmorden coal yard, 20 miles from his home. Dressed in a suit, but missing his shirt, watch, and wallet, his body bore strange burns on the head, neck, and shoulders. The circumstances surrounding his death puzzled authorities and residents alike. The coroner who examined Zygmunt's body described the case as the most perplexing of his career. Despite being missing for 5 days, and although the body appeared to have died very recently, Zygmunt's beard growth suggested he had only been gone for 1. His hair was also cut strangely and roughly. Even more mysterious was the unknown ointment applied to his burns, which could not be identified by forensic scientists. No hospital had any record of treating Zygmunt during his disappearance, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. Before long, whispers of extraterrestrial involvement began to circulate. Some theorized that in a case of mistaken identity, they had abducted the Yorkshire miner. This theory gained traction when Alan Godfrey, the policeman who found Zygmunt's body, had his own bizarre encounter. 6 months after the discovery, Godfrey was on duty in Todmorden early one morning when he claimed to have seen an unidentified flying object, a sighting that to some must have been related to Zygmunt's mysterious death. This sighting led Godfrey to leave the police force. In the 2 decades following these events, the Pennine Hills around Todmorden have become known as Britain's UFO hotspot, with numerous reported sightings. The enigmatic death of Zygmunt Adamski continues to fascinate and unsettle. For those like Alan Godfrey, who witnessed the unexplainable, the possibility of extraterrestrial involvement remains a plausible, if unsettling, reality. Number 9. The disappearance of the Jameson family. The odd case of the Jameson family has dredged up countless questions since their disappearance on October 8, 2009. This case has sparked some of the most twisted theories in true crime. The family, 44-year-old Bobby Dale, 40-year-old Sherilyn Leanne, and their 6-year-old daughter, Madison Stormy Starr, vanished under mysterious circumstances from their home in Eufaula, Oklahoma. The last known sighting of the family was by a resident living in the mountainous region of southeastern Oklahoma. The family was reportedly in the area to view land they were considering buying. 8 days after they were last spotted, hunters discovered the Jamesons' truck abandoned in a secluded wooded area. Inside the locked vehicle, investigators found a GPS, Sherilyn's purse, Bobby's wallet and cell phone, jackets, $32,000 in cash, and their malnourished pet dog. On the cell phone was a picture of Madison, likely captured the day before they vanished. Strangely enough, it did not appear that the vehicle had been broken into. There were no signs of struggle evident in the area. The truck's GPS suggested the family had made it a ways up a hill a short distance from where the vehicle was found. Following the digital trail, investigators discovered footprints. The next day, a search party of over 300 people combed the area, but yielded no new leads, and eventually the search was called off. 4 years passed, and still no answers, until hunters in the area came across the skeletal remains of 2 adults and a child in the woods under 3 miles from the Jamesons' last known location. The remains were later positively identified as those of the Jameson family. The cause of death could not be determined because of the incomplete nature of the remains and the advanced state of decomposition. According to the state medical examiner, there was no clear evidence of trauma. The examiner's final report deemed the deaths suspicious. The investigation also highlighted 2 items that were never located: a briefcase and Sherilyn's .22 caliber handgun. When they disappeared, neither Bobby nor Sherilyn was working due to disabilities. The source of the $32,000 found in the truck remains unknown and unexplained. Security footage from the day the family left their home added another layer to the mystery. The video showed Bobby and Sherilyn making multiple trips between their car and house in silence while packing to leave. Former Sheriff Israel Beauchamp called their actions trance-like. Even stranger, before they vanished, Bobby confided in his pastor, claiming his house was haunted. He insisted that 2 to 4 ghosts lingered under his roof. Several theories have emerged to explain the Jamesons' disappearance and deaths. Some believe the family became lost or disoriented in the woods and eventually succumbed to hypothermia. However, weather records indicate temperatures were not severe, and their remains were discovered only a short distance from their vehicle. A strange letter from Sherilyn to Bobby, found in the abandoned truck, led to speculation of a possible murder. The letter, described as a hate letter, accused Bobby of being a hermit. A second letter mentioning death was found in their home. Some suggest there was a cult involvement. Sherilyn's mother believes this theory, as after a TV special on the case, a woman claimed a white supremacy group had a hit list that included Sherilyn. Additionally, a witch Bible was found in the Jameson home, though it was reportedly bought as a joke. Others suggest drugs may have been involved, which might explain the Jamesons' strange behavior and the large sum of money. However, no concrete evidence of drug use or dealing was found. The Jameson family's case remains unsolved, with many possible explanations, but no definitive answers. Sheriff Beauchamp summed up the perplexing nature of the case, stating, "With this family, everything seems possible." Number 8. The Lost Colony of Roanoke. In the annals of American history, few mysteries are as perplexing as the disappearance of the Roanoke colony. It all began in August 1587, when a band of 115 English settlers landed on Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. Led by John White, this landing marked the second attempt to establish a permanent English settlement in the New World, following a failed endeavor 2 years prior. As the settlers began to build their new life, they faced an urgent crisis. Their supplies were rapidly dwindling. It was decided that Governor John White would sail back to England to gather the necessary provisions and bring them back to the burgeoning colony. He left behind his wife, daughter, infant granddaughter, who was the first English child born in the Americas, and the rest of the hopeful settlers. Upon reaching England, White's mission was immediately thwarted by circumstances beyond his control. The country was on the brink of war with Spain, and Queen Elizabeth I had ordered all available ships to defend against the Spanish Armada. White was therefore stranded in England for 3 long years, unable to return to his family and fellow survivors. When White finally made his way back to Roanoke in August 1590, he was met with silence. As his ship approached the island, he noticed that the settlement's walls had been fortified, indicating that it had thrived for at least some time after his departure. But there was no one in sight. The Roanoke colony was abandoned, and the only clue to the fate of the colonists was a single word: Croatoan, carved into a wooden post. This cryptic message suggested a connection to the nearby Croatoan island, inhabited by a friendly Native American tribe, but it provided no concrete answers. Over the centuries, the fate of the lost colony of Roanoke has baffled historians. Theories started to proliferate. Some believe the settlers were killed or abducted by hostile Native American tribes. The Croatoan carving might indicate that they sought refuge with the Croatoan tribe, yet no definitive evidence supports this hypothesis. None of the settlers revealed themselves when other Englishmen encountered the tribe. Other theories propose that the desperate colonists tried to sail back to England themselves, only to be lost at sea. Some suggest they may have met a violent end at the hands of Spanish explorers making their way north from Florida. Another possibility is that they moved further inland, integrating with more hospitable tribes, their European heritage blending into Native American culture over time. The empty settlement, the cryptic Croatoan carving, and the vanished lives of 115 settlers weave a tale that continues to captivate historians and laymen alike. In recent years, the quest to uncover the truth has taken a modern approach. In 2007, researchers began collecting and analyzing DNA from local families to identify any genetic links to the Roanoke settlers or Native American tribes. However, this method has yet to provide concrete answers, and so we wait. Number 7. The WOW signal. Wow. Astronomer Jerry Eman wrote in the margins while reviewing the printout of a narrow-band radio wave that lasted 72 seconds. A radio wave that would soon spark theories ranging from extraterrestrial communication to stellar phenomena. Captured on August 15, 1977, at Ohio's Big Ear Radio Observatory, the WOW signal has fascinated scientists and the public alike for over 4 decades. Eman was reviewing data a few days after the signal was detected and was so astonished by its clarity and strength that he scribbled the exclamation that gave the signal its name: "Wow." It was unlike anything seen before or since during searches for extraterrestrial intelligence. Despite numerous theories, the signal's origin has remained a mystery, perhaps until now. Intriguing new evidence from former U.S. Department of Defense analyst and adjunct astronomy professor Antonio Paris suggests a solution to this astronomical mystery. In their research, Paris and his team discovered that 2 comets, P2008Y2 Gibbs and 266P Christensen, were crossing the area of the sky being monitored by the Big Ear Radio Observatory at the time the WOW signal was detected. They proposed that the signal was emitted by a hydrogen cloud accompanying one of these comets. This theory would also explain why the signal was never detected again. The comet and its hydrogen cloud had moved along its orbital path. Paris and his team took advantage of a unique opportunity to survey the sky around the constellation Sagittarius a second time, this time via a 10-meter radio telescope. They timed their observations to coincide with comet 266P Christensen's passage through the same region. The results were striking. The signal emitted by 266P Christensen, along with those from 3 other comets, matched many of the characteristics of the original WOW signal. However, the original signal detected in 1977 was significantly stronger than what Paris's team observed. Paris explains this discrepancy by pointing out the difference in sensitivity between the 2 radio telescopes. The Big Ear Radio Telescope, with a sensitivity equivalent to a 52.5-meter dish, was far more powerful than the 10-meter telescope used by Paris's team. Additionally, comets lose mass as they journey through the inner solar system, meaning that comet 266P Christensen would have been much larger and thus potentially emitting a stronger signal 40 years ago. Despite these compelling findings, Paris acknowledges that his hypothesis is not definitive. There remains a possibility, however remote, that the WOW signal could have been caused by another unidentified source. Still, his team's conclusions suggest that the 1977 WOW signal was most likely a natural phenomenon generated by a comet. Paris has published his team's observations and theories through the Center for Planetary Science, a non-profit organization where he serves as chief scientist. This unconventional publication route has sparked some debate in the scientific community, yet the findings are nonetheless drawing attention. This research opens up the fascinating possibility that the infamous WOW signal, once a potential sign of extraterrestrial contact, may have actually been the result of a comet passing through our neighborhood. Number 6. The vanishing hotel ghosts of the Hotel del Salto. Perched precariously on the edge of Tequendama Falls, El Hotel del Salto is a place that has captivated imaginations and ignited rumors of the supernatural for decades. Built in 1928 along the Bogota River, this once luxurious resort was a go-to for the elites, offering stunning views and opulent accommodations. However, as the years rolled on, river pollution caused the waterfall to diminish, leading to the hotel's decline and eventual closure in the 1990s. Despite its abandonment, the allure of El Hotel del Salto has only grown stronger, drawing thrill-seekers and paranormal enthusiasts from all corners of the globe. Its corridors are now filled not with the laughter of the affluent, but with tales of ghostly apparitions, tragic and sinister rituals. Those who dare explore its grounds speak of eerie screams echoing from the falls, the ghostly figure of the hotel's former owner wandering the halls, and whispers of black magic sacrifices in the shadowy corners of this once grand establishment. Some even claim to hear loud cries from inside the hotel after sunset. Legends say that the Muisca, the people indigenous to the area, would throw themselves off the picturesque waterfall in order to escape Spanish conquistadors who would seize native people for nefarious purposes. Are these stories true? Are the mysterious screams and cries coming from the vanishing hotel guests of Hotel del Salto? Or are they lingering echoes of the indigenous people who once inhabited this land? There is no denying the harrowing atmosphere that envelops El Hotel del Salto. Stepping inside is like entering a forgotten world, where the ghosts of the past linger amidst the dust and decay. The opulence that once defined the hotel is still visible in the elegant chandeliers, grand fireplaces, and intricate frescoes adorning the ceilings. Yet this luxury is juxtaposed with the scars of neglect, debris, broken glass, and graffiti. In recent years, efforts have been made to restore and repurpose this enigmatic location. Now known as the Casa Museo del Salto del Tequendama, the hotel has been transformed into a museum dedicated to the biodiversity and culture of the Tequendama Falls region. The restoration, which cost $410,000, has breathed new life into the structure, preserving its historical significance while offering a more structured and informative visitor experience. Yet, even with its new guise, the mystery and allure of El Hotel del Salto remain. The stories that surround it, whether born of truth or imagination, continue to draw those who are fascinated by the unknown. Number 5. The Circleville Letters. This is the tale of a pen pal that no one wanted. In the late 1970s, the quiet town of Circleville, Ohio, became the epicenter of an unsettling mystery. Residents, businesses, and government offices began receiving anonymous letters that threatened to expose their darkest secrets. The letters claimed an almost omnipresent knowledge of the town's happenings, their sinister tone leaving the recipients in a state of perpetual dread. Mary Gillespie, a local bus driver, received one such letter in 1977. "I've been observing your house," it read ominously. "Stay away from Massey." The letter's author seemingly knew of her affair with Gordon Massey, the school superintendent, a secret Mary thought was well hidden. This wasn't an isolated incident. Across Circleville, others received similarly threatening letters, including Mary's husband, Ron Gillespie. Ron's letters were even more alarming. "Mr. Gillespie, your wife is seeing Gordon Massey. You should catch them together and kill them both. He doesn't deserve to live," one letter read. Despite the threatening nature of these messages, the Gillespies initially tried to dismiss them, hoping they would stop. But the letters persisted, escalating in intensity and frequency. "Gillespie, you have had 2 weeks and done nothing. Admit the truth and inform the school board. If not, I will broadcast it on CBS, posters, signs, and billboards until the truth comes out." And the mystery didn't stop at mere correspondence. One August evening in 1977, Ron received a phone call that seemed to push him over the edge. He grabbed his .22 caliber revolver and stormed out, telling his daughter he was going to confront the letter writer. Hours later, his truck was found crashed into a tree. Ron was dead, the revolver having been fired once. The local coroner ruled it an accident, but suspicions of foul play lingered. Despite Ron's tragic death, the letters continued unabated. Mary Gillespie and Gordon Massey remained prime targets. In 1983, the terror came to a head when Mary narrowly escaped a deadly trap. A sign targeting her daughter led her to a box rigged with a loaded gun. The gun was traced back to Paul Freshour, Ron Gillespie's brother-in-law. Freshour's estranged wife, Karen Sue, told the police that Paul had written the letters. She had found them hidden in their house. Freshour denied everything, claiming the gun had been stolen weeks before. In 1984, Freshour was convicted of attempted murder. An expert witness testified that evidence indicated that Freshour had written the Circleville letters. Residents hoped that his imprisonment would end the torment, but in a surprise twist, the letters didn't stop when the alleged perpetrator was in custody. Even with Freshour behind bars, Circleville's mailboxes continued to be filled with threats and accusations. The prison warden confirmed that Freshour had no access to writing materials. Freshour himself received a letter from the anonymous writer while incarcerated. All eyes turned to Karen Sue. Her boyfriend matched a witness description from the booby trap crime scene. This led some to ask, was this all a setup? As the years passed, the mystery only grew. In December 1993, when the TV show Unsolved Mysteries investigated, they received a letter warning them to stay away from Circleville. Forget Circleville, Ohio. If you come to Ohio, UL sickos will pay. Paul Freshour was paroled in 1994, the same year the letters inexplicably ceased. He maintained his innocence until his death, and despite a recent forensic examination revealing similarities between his handwriting and the letters, no definitive proof has ever emerged. Decades later, the identity of the Circleville writer remains unknown. Number 4. The ghost ship of the Arctic. On a cold day in 1969, in the frigid expanse between Icy Cape and Point Barrow, Alaska, a group of Inupiat hunters stumbled upon a haunting sight. A rusting hulk trapped in the freezing ice. No name was visible on its weather-beaten frame, but they knew it could only be the Beichimo, the legendary ghost ship of the Arctic, last seen 38 years prior when her crew abandoned her to the elements. The ship, swallowed by time and ice, should have sunk long ago. Yet, in the 54 years since her disappearance, no wreck was ever found. Up until that point, the Beichimo's disappearance remained a mystery, haunting the frozen seas. The ship's tale began in 1914 in the shipyards of Gothenburg, Sweden. The stout, steel-hulled cargo steamship was built for German owners and designed to withstand the harsh, ice-laden waters of Northern Europe. For years, she faithfully plied the Baltic ports, a workhorse amidst the chaos of World War I. With the war's end came a twist of fate. The Treaty of Versailles forced Germany to relinquish many of its ships as reparations. Among these spoils was the Beichimo, handed over to Great Britain and sold to the Hudson Bay Company in 1920. The ship embarked on a new life in the Western Arctic of Canada, navigating from Vancouver to the Yukon and Northwest Territories. By all accounts, the Beichimo was unremarkable, a lumbering vessel of iron and steam. Yet she was resilient, her reinforced bow slicing through ice floes with relative ease. The Arctic's capricious weather and shifting ice were constant threats, but the Beichimo and her crew endured, surviving close calls and harrowing storms. In 1924, the HBC ship Lady Kindersley was trapped off Point Barrow, drifting north in an implacable ice pack. The Beichimo arrived too late to rescue the crew, but stayed to recover the cargo. It was a grim reminder of the Arctic's unforgiving nature, a prelude to the Beichimo's own fateful year of 1931. Captain Sidney Cornwell, a seasoned mariner, led the Beichimo through the icy labyrinth. But 1931 was different. Cornwell warned his superiors of the ship's inadequate strength, but economic pressures drove the HBC to push her onward. By late July, the Beichimo was in a fight for her life near Wainwright. For weeks, Cornwell battled the elements, navigating between towering ice cliffs. On August 21st, a break in the ice allowed them to anchor at Port Barrow, but the delay was costly. As September turned to October, the situation grew dire. A storm severed a propeller blade, stranding the ship. With supplies dwindling, Cornwell ordered preparations to abandon ship. On November 24th, a blizzard struck, and when it cleared, the Beichimo had vanished, leaving only a mound of ice in her place. Presumed sunk, the Beichimo became a ghost. A week later, trappers spotted her drifting aimlessly. Cornwell and a few men tried to reach her, but were thwarted by the broken ice. Over the next few years, the Beichimo was seen sporadically, but eluded capture. In August 1933, the crew of the schooner Trader encountered her near Wainwright. They boarded her, finding bales of furs and other remnants of the ship's past life, before a storm carried her away once more. The Beichimo's legend grew, her sightings rare and mysterious. In 1962 and again in 1969, she reappeared, only to vanish into the Arctic fog. The Beichimo's final resting place is unknown. Artifacts from her storied past reside in the Museum of the North at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, visible witnesses to the legend of Alaska's true ghost ship. Number 3. The Lake Anjikuni disappearance. On a bitterly cold November day in 1930, Canadian fur trapper Joe LaBelle arrived at the frozen shores of Lake Anjikuni. LaBelle, familiar with the welcoming Inuit community that lived there, was looking for food and shelter. But as he approached, he realized that an eerie silence enveloped the village. No children playing, no fires crackling, no voices carrying on the wind, just an unsettling, deathly quiet. LaBelle beached his canoe about 100 yards from the village and called out, expecting the usual warm greetings. Instead, 2 gaunt, starving huskies emerged, their desperation palpable. Nearby, the bodies of 7 more dogs lay lifeless, victims of starvation. LaBelle's sense of unease deepened. Drawing closer, he saw the remains of fires, with embers cold and lifeless. In one fire pit, a pot of charred food sat, suggesting a meal abandoned mid-preparation. The village stood empty. 6 elfskin huts, home to about 30 people, were eerily silent. LaBelle's heart pounded as he entered the nearest hut. He expected the worst, but found instead a haunting scene of daily life interrupted. Boots, parkas, half-sewn clothing, greasy iron pots, and abandoned cooking fires painted a picture of sudden departure. Fish and deer bones lay scattered, the only evidence of the once thriving community's sustenance. A rusted rifle leaned against a wall, a practical and valuable item not likely to have been left behind if the villagers had fled voluntarily. In another hut, LaBelle discovered more food and weapons left untouched. A child-sized sealskin coat lay half-mended, the needle still in the fabric. It was as though time had frozen in the midst of everyday tasks, leaving behind a snapshot of an ordinary day that came to an abrupt halt. Puzzled and alarmed, LaBelle pondered why the villagers would have abandoned their homes with ample food and weapons at hand. Despite his exhaustion, the trapper dared not stay in the ghostly village. He hastened to inform the nearest authorities, spurring a series of investigations. The disappearance of the Lake Anjikuni village became a topic of intense debate. No signs of violence or struggle were found, ruling out theories of murder or abduction. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police discovered that the Inuit had been missing for almost 8 weeks by the time LaBelle arrived. But for what reason, they could only guess. During their investigation, the RCMP reported seeing mysterious, pulsating lights in the sky above the lake, adding a potentially paranormal or extraterrestrial layer to the mystery. In 1931, the RCMP concluded their investigation, dismissing the story as a fabrication due to the lack of evidence. Despite this, the legend of the vanished village of Lake Anjikuni endures, leaving many to wonder what might have happened to over 3 dozen people. Number 2. The Lead Coffins of Chase Vault. In the quaint town of Oistins, Barbados, a vault within the cemetery of Christchurch Parish Church has a centuries-old mystery hidden inside. This vault, known as the Chase Vault, appears unremarkable at first glance, but it harbors an inexplicable mystery that continues to baffle locals and visitors alike. The story begins in 1724, when James Elliot purchased the vault. Its first occupant was his wife Elizabeth, interred in 1792. The vault changed hands in 1807, bought by the Walrond family, who allowed Elizabeth's coffin to remain. But when they opened the vault to lay Thomasina Goddard to rest, they were met with a startling sight. Elizabeth's coffin had vanished without a trace. Despite this unsettling discovery, Thomasina's body was placed inside, and the mystery of Elizabeth's missing coffin remained unsolved. A year later, in 1808, the Chase family acquired the vault. The first to be buried was little Mary Ann Chase, who tragically died at the age of 2. Her small coffin joined Thomasina's in the eerie stillness of the crypt. 4 years later, Mary Ann's sister Dorcas, driven to madness by her father's cruelty, starved herself to death. Her father, Thomas Chase, followed shortly after, taking his own life. When Thomas's body was to be placed inside, the vault was opened to a scene of chaos. All the coffins were scattered about, as if tossed by an unseen force, despite their lead construction making even moving them into place incredibly difficult. Dorcas and Mary Ann's coffins were found standing upright against a wall. Speculation ran wild. Had vandals broken in and tampered with the coffins? The vault's heavy marble door was still sealed, and nothing inside had been stolen. The coffins were repositioned, and the door was sealed more tightly than before. Yet the mystery deepened with each subsequent burial. In 1816, when young Charles Brewster Ames was laid to rest, the vault was found in disarray once more. The heavy lead coffins, including Thomas Chase's, appeared once again as if they had been violently thrown around. Yet no natural disaster had occurred since the vault was last opened. Later that year, Samuel Brewster's interment revealed the same chaotic scene. And in 1819, Thomasina Clark joined the array of disturbed coffins. On some occasions, the coffins were found broken or partially open, with skeletal remains exposed, fueling fears of supernatural interference. The strange occurrences caught the attention of Lord Combermere, the governor of Barbados at the time. He devised a plan to solve the mysteries. Sand was spread on the floor of the vault, and the entrance was sealed with cement. However, when the tomb was reopened in 1820, the coffins had once again moved, but the sand remained undisturbed, indicating that no one had entered, at least no one human. The decision was made to remove the coffins from the vault and bury them separately. The Chase vault now remains empty and unsealed. Various theories have been proposed over the years as to what may have occurred inside the vault. Some suggest that an earthquake might have shaken the coffins, but no seismic activity was recorded in Barbados during the relevant years. Others speculate that flooding caused the coffins to float and shift, yet this fails to explain how the sand remained undisturbed. And so, the mystery remains, and the vault keeps its secrets. Number 1. The disappearance of Flight MH370. An airplane vanishing into thin air. 239 people just gone. On March 8, 2014, the world witnessed the inexplicable disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, a Boeing 777 carrying 227 passengers and 12 crew members. The aircraft, en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, vanished without a trace, sparking an international search that spanned from the Indian Ocean to Central Asia. The baffling loss of Flight 370 has since become one of the most captivating mysteries in aviation history. Flight 370 departed Kuala Lumpur at 12:41 a.m. local time, climbing to its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet by 1:01 a.m. The aircraft communication addressing and reporting system sent its last transmission at 1:07 a.m. before it was mysteriously turned off. At 1:19 a.m., the final voice communication from the crew was received. Moments later, at 1:21 a.m., the plane's transponder, which communicates with air traffic control, was switched off just as the aircraft was entering Vietnamese airspace over the South China Sea. By 1:30 a.m., Malaysian military and civilian radars began tracking the aircraft as it made a sharp turn back towards Malaysia, flying southwest over the Malay Peninsula and northwest over the Strait of Malacca. At 2:22 a.m., the plane vanished from Malaysian military radar over the Andaman Sea. Yet, an immersed satellite stationed over the Indian Ocean continued to receive hourly signals from Flight 370 until 8:11 a.m., marking its last known communication. Initial search efforts concentrated on the South China Sea. However, once it was determined that Flight 370 had changed course after the transponder was switched off, the focus shifted to the Strait of Malacca and the Andaman Sea. On March 15th, a week after the plane's disappearance, it was revealed that the immersed satellite had received intermittent signals from the aircraft. While these signals did not provide an exact location, they indicated that the plane could be anywhere along two possible arcs, one stretching south into the Indian Ocean and another north across Asia. On March 24th, Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak announced that the analysis of the final signals by Immersed and the UK's Air Accidents Investigation Branch suggested the plane had crashed in a remote part of the Indian Ocean, approximately 1,500 miles southwest of Australia. Given the desolation of the area, the possibility of any survivors was deemed extremely unlikely. The search was significantly hampered by the remoteness of the crash site. In early April, an Australian ship detected several acoustic pings, potentially from the aircraft's flight recorder, around 1,200 miles northwest of Perth, Western Australia. These signals were last detected on April 8th, likely marking the end of the flight recorder's battery life. Subsequent searches using a robotic submarine yielded no debris, and it was later suggested that the pings could have been caused by a faulty cable in the acoustic equipment. The first piece of confirmed debris from Flight 370, a right-wing flaperon, was found on July 29, 2015, on the French island of Réunion, far from the initial search area. Over the following year and a half, 26 additional pieces of debris were discovered on the shores of Tanzania, Mozambique, South Africa, Madagascar, and Mauritius. 3 of these were definitively identified as coming from the missing aircraft, while 17 others were likely to have come from the plane. Damage to some of the debris pieces indicated the plane had not undergone a controlled descent, suggesting it might have plummeted into the ocean. The Malaysian government's final report in July 2018 concluded that mechanical malfunction was improbable and that manual inputs likely altered the flight path. But the reasons for these actions remain unknown. Theories about the disappearance range from catastrophic mechanical failure to deliberate pilot actions. Some speculated hijacking, but no terrorist group claimed responsibility. Investigations into the crew's backgrounds revealed nothing overtly suspicious, although some reports pointed to the pilot's home flight simulator, which had simulated a route over the southern Indian Ocean. This discovery fueled theories of a premeditated act by the pilot. Despite numerous investigations and extensive searches, the mystery of Flight 370 was never solved, leaving the ultimate fate of the plane and its 239 occupants unknown. A dark chapter in aviation history.